Dallas and throughout the country, not just in the law enforcement community, but for everyone. It all started more than 48 hours ago when the reverberations of the cold-blooded killing of 5 police officers and the shooting of 12 more and 2 civilians will be felt for years. That is, 7 more and 2 civilians. On Thursday night, we were focused on demonstrations across the country when the gunshots rang out in Dallas. Here's what viewers saw as the events unfolded.
It was a peaceful protest, very peaceful. No one was acting up, no one was acting crazy.
The police officers were actually adding us to some hot cars, so they weren't trying to harm anybody or anything. And then that's whenever I heard the gunshots and I just saw everybody scattered.
We're looking back in Dallas, Texas. This is disturbing. I'm not sure what we're seeing, but it looks from this vantage point like an officer down. We're all seeing this together. That officer is not moving. This is the state of America today.
I need to let you know what the breaking news here is, and that is we believe a number of police officers have been shot.
I am standing in the middle of Main Street in downtown Dallas. At this time of night, you bars and restaurants here, normally you would have lots of traffic, and you have a massive police presence instead here tonight. This is still an active shooter situation.
Now it appears, according to the reporting of the Dallas Morning News, 3 Dallas proper police officers are dead and 1 DART officer has been killed, which brings the death toll to this police-targeted shooting to 4.
Currently, we are in negotiations with a suspect involved in these shootings at the garage of El Centro in downtown Dallas. The suspect stated he wanted to kill white people, especially white officers. The suspect stated he was not affiliated with any groups.
And this evening, before we go, I want to refer to a poem that I've referred to many times when police officers have died. And I think that you will appreciate it as I do. It's called The Final Inspection. The policeman stood and faced his God, which must always come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining just as brightly as his brass. Step forward now, policeman. How shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek? To my church have you been true? The policeman squared his shoulders and said, No, Lord, I guess I ain't, because those of us who carry badges can't always be a saint. I've had to work most Sundays, Lord, and at times my talk was rough, and sometimes I've been violent because the streets are awfully tough. But I never took a penny, Lord, that wasn't mine to keep, though I worked a lot of overtime when the bills got just too steep. And I never passed a cry for help, though at times I shook with fear, and sometimes, God forgive me, I've wept unmanly tears. I know, Lord, I don't deserve a place among the people here. They never wanted me around, in fact, except to calm their fear. If you've a place for me here, Lord, it needn't be so grand. I never expected or had too much, but if you don't, I'll understand. There was silence all around the throne, where the saints had often trod, as the policeman waited quietly for the judgment of his God. Step forward now, policeman. You've borne your burdens well. Come walk a beat on heaven's streets. You've done your time in hell. Tonight we recognize all of the men and women who walk those streets, and we tell them that we understand it's not an easy beat. That's it for us tonight on Justice. I'm Judge Janine Pirro. We're going to see you tomorrow night at 9 for another 2-hour edition of Justice. See you tomorrow. And a debate rages that could impact the future of this country. Hello and welcome to the special 2-hour edition of Justice. I'm Judge Janine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. Just moments ago, police concluded a search at the parking garage, investigating reports of a suspicious person there. Joining me now, live from Dallas, is senior correspondent Rick Leventhal. Rick, what happened here?
Well, Judge, we were in front of the front doors of the Dallas Police Headquarters here on Lamar Street on Dallas' south side when we saw a SWAT vehicle come screaming by with lights and sirens, wheeled into this outdoor parking lot adjacent to the parking garage that is used by the police department officers and employees. The garage is situated right behind the Dallas Police Headquarters. So the SWAT officers went in very quickly as other officers took up defensive positions here outside the building. And Jay, come back down this way. You see a brick wall over there, trees, and vehicles in the parking lot. The officers were standing behind these vehicles as SWAT team members went inside the garage because of another Dallas Police Department employee who saw a suspicious person inside that garage. Judge, the garage is only there for employees of the Dallas Police Department. So one or two employees of Dallas Police saw this other person in the garage who did not belong there, tried to stop that person, and that person took off. So that's why the SWAT team went in. They sealed this whole area off. The street was closed for blocks in either direction. There was a police helicopter overhead. They spent over an hour inside the garage going car to car. They used a breach and a shotgun blast to breach a fence and apparently a door as well to gain access to other areas inside that garage in a search for this suspicious person whom they never found. They sent a canine team in for a secondary search to ensure that there was not a living, breathing person who didn't belong in there. Did not find anyone. So just as you mentioned moments ago, they cleared this scene and we saw SWAT officers discussing the situation and then congratulating each other, even fist bumping before they took off, and they have now allowed the media back in. We were actually behind some of the trees in the stand of woods right here. Then they pushed us back to the sidewalk, and then they pushed us clear across the street because they were on edge. They were concerned that there may be someone threatening officers. They had received what they said was a credible threat, Judge, earlier today. The entire department was on alert. All of this coming, of course, after 4 officers were killed and 7 others wounded, plus a 5th officer with the Dallas area rapid transit killed in that sniper attack last Thursday night. So they're on edge. They get this threat, and then they have a suspicious person in the garage. Fortunately, there was no incident here. But unfortunately, whoever that suspicious person was has gotten away.
Well, you know, Rick, in addition to that, the shooter himself had made some threats about the end coming or more was coming. So that kind of tied in with the suspicious person as well as, the situation, I'm sure, added to the, the fear.
On the night of the shooting, Micah Johnson, the gunman, told authorities, told a hostage negotiator during a several-hour standoff that he had explosives and that he would set off bombs. And when police went to his home after they killed Micah Johnson, they found bomb-making materials in the home that he shared with his mother. They also found other rifles and ammunition and ballistic vests and a manual that he apparently kept, a journal of sorts that had combat techniques inside of it. And we've heard from neighbors, Judge, that Micah Johnson was practicing those techniques in his backyard in the days and weeks leading up to Thursday night's attack. This was a man who had a vendetta against police officers, specifically white police officers, and carried out that vendetta on Thursday and threatened other officers' lives before they finally took him out. So, yeah, there was a concern that perhaps he had left explosive devices in the city of Dallas and no one found any of those devices. And then when this all started, we didn't know if that's what this was about. And as it turned out, it was about another suspicious person.
All right, Rick Leventhal, stay safe out there. On Thursday night, we were focused on demonstrations all across the country when the gunshots rang out in Dallas. Here's what viewers saw as those events unfolded.
It was a peaceful protest, very peaceful. No one was acting up, no one was acting crazy.
The police officers were actually at a distance of cop cars, so they weren't trying to harm anybody or anything. And that's whenever I heard the gunshots, and I just saw everybody together.
We're looking back in Dallas Texas. This is disturbing. I'm not sure what we're seeing, but it looks from this vantage point like an officer down. We're all seeing this together. That officer is not moving. This is the state of America today.
I need to let you know what the breaking news here is, and that is we believe a number of police officers have been shot.
I am standing in the middle of Main Street in downtown Dallas. At this time of night, you bars and restaurants here, normally you would have lots of traffic, and you have a massive police presence instead here tonight. This is still an active shooter situation.
Now it appears, according to the reporting of the Dallas Morning News, 3 Dallas proper police officers are dead and 1 DART officer has been killed, which brings the death toll to this police-targeted shooting to 4.
Currently, we are in negotiations with a suspect involved in these shootings at the garage of El Centro in downtown Dallas. The suspect stated he wanted to kill white people, especially white officers. The suspect stated he was not affiliated with any groups.
And now, my opening statement. Americans got over the racial divide when we elected a black president, not only once, but twice. Americans overwhelmingly voted for the man, blind to his color. His color made no difference to American voters. Long past the issue of race, voters long past the Civil War, long past the Civil Rights era, focused more on the content of the character than the color of the skin. But this week's shooting of 12 police officers and 2 civilians in Dallas is a reflection of a new, deep division created by that very man. The shooting in Dallas was not just about racism. Make no mistake, that dirtbag shooter, who will remain nameless in this open, was a racist. An African American, he wanted to kill only white people, especially white officers. And the shooting in Dallas wasn't just about police brutality. I got news for you, folks. Police brutality is colorblind. It crosses all racial and ethnic lines. I know I prosecuted them. And it wasn't just about someone mentally ill. I've always found that stigma too easy an excuse for evil. And it wasn't about guns either. Dallas was about anarchy. It was about lawlessness. It was about rhetoric, the rhetoric that too easily inflames those who feel wronged. Rhetoric that does nothing but repeatedly stoke the flames and scars of old wounds resolved long ago. At a time when Americans are both experiencing and fearing the reality of a Muslim jihad against us, our president, at a prayer breakfast no less, attempts to reconcile or explain murders in the name of Allah with this.
Unless we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery, Jim Crow, all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
And after the shooting of 12 police officers, he seeks to again remind us not of the situation of the 12 officers shot, the shooting and the injured and the trauma that surrounded it, but instead talks of the deaths of 2 African Americans. A follow-up that seems like another, get off your high horse, folks, it's your turn.
Americans of all races and all backgrounds were also rightly saddened and angered about the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, and about the larger persistent problem of African Americans and Latinos being treated differently in our criminal justice system.
The problems of African Americans and Latinos being treated differently in our criminal justice system. Every chance he gets, he stokes the flames. Example, Trayvon Martin, followed by a not guilty verdict. And Ferguson's Michael Brown, a thug who tried to grab a cop's gun and got himself shot. There wasn't even a grand jury indictment and not even federal charges against the police officer. But Ferguson was about anarchy, and anyone with a functioning brain would have to assume that for Michael Brown to grab a cop's gun suggests it wasn't his first encounter with the law. Who told Brown that he and not the law should be in control? Yet the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and high-end government officials all rushed to Ferguson, to his funeral as well. And Baltimore, another training ground for anarchists, a perceived wrong. The response based on rhetoric of racial injustice and hate, that should be a violent protest? The response should be the burning of businesses, many owned by African Americans? And a DA who outrageously runs to a microphone and announces an indictment of 6 cops saying she hears the calls of a lawless mob? And again, all the police painted as racist, get no convictions. And it was an African American judge who made the calls. And in New York, the chant, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. And then 2 cops innocently eating lunch in their squad car, assassinated not long after. When we have leaders who vehemently support the First Amendment language and protest the call for the deaths of those who wear the badge, but then caution the rest of us not to say something that would offend another's religion.
And if in fact we defend the legal right of a person to insult another's religion, we're equally obligated to use our free speech to condemn such insults and stand shoulder to shoulder with religious communities, particularly religious minorities who are targets of such attacks.
And our president, upon hearing of the assassination of 5 police officers, all white, and the shooting of another 7 officers, wants to talk about a white kid walking into a black church shooting. Why, Mr. President, are you even bringing this up? It's the same thing you did at the prayer breakfast. After an American has his head cut off, you want to talk about the Crusades. It's as if it's your turn. Mr. President, you have done nothing but tell us we deserve it. You have done nothing but look back in the rearview mirror. But when I look at Dallas, all I saw were whites and blacks running away from anarchy. All I saw were whites and blacks picking each other up. That's the America I see, and no one is going to change my mind. And no one, not even you, Mr. President, is going to do that.